Have you ever really stopped to think about how much a country's mountains, its rivers, its coastlines can actually shape the soul of its people? It's pretty amazing. For some nations, their whole identity is forged in the vastness of an expanding frontier. For others, it's defined by the isolation of the sea. And for some, well, it's the fate of being a crossroads where empires have always collided. So today, we're going to explore how these geographical archetypes have shaped the destinies of nations.
It's a really powerful idea, isn't it? The thought that a nation's physical place in the world, the dirt under its feet, the water at its shores, can forge its character, its politics, and its entire path through history. This single idea is the lens we're going to be looking through today.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to look at 3 really fascinating case studies, and each one represents a unique archetype. We'll start in the heart of Europe with Romania, the Crossroads. Then, we're going to hop across the Atlantic to the United States, the continent. And finally, we'll journey to the United Kingdom, the quintessential island.
Okay, our first stop is Romania. You really can't tell the story of this nation without understanding its position on the map, kind of wedged between great historical empires, right at the meeting point of Central, Eastern, and Southeast Europe. What's so wild about Romania's landscape is how incredibly balanced it is. And that balance has had a huge impact on its history. Its territory is divided almost perfectly, about 1/3 mountains, 1/3 hills, and 1/3 plains. This symmetry basically created the stage where its whole national story has played out.
Right at the country's heart, you've got this crown of the Carpathian Mountains. But here's the thing, unlike other huge mountain ranges that act like walls, the Carpathians are crisscrossed by deep valleys and passes. They're more of a passage than a barrier. Then you've got the Danube River, this vital artery that nearly all of Romania's rivers flow into. And all of this comes together at the famous Iron Gate Gorge on the Danube, a spot that's both a gateway and a natural fortress.
So when you put all of this together, what do you get? You get a classic crossroads nation. Its identity has been constantly molded by its location on the borders of these vast empires, the Ottoman, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian. It's always been a land of passage, of contact, and yeah, often of conflict.
And if you need just one single fact to perfectly capture this whole idea, here it is. Romania is literally halfway between the western edge of Europe on the Atlantic and its eastern boundary at the Ural Mountains. It really is the geographic center point of the continent.
All right, so from a nation defined by its fixed position, let's head across the Atlantic to the United States. This is a country whose identity was forged not by where it is, but by where it was going. Its story is all about constant movement.
And this slide, well, it shows you just how incredibly fast all of this happened. You start with just 13 colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast in 1776. Then, boom, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 instantly doubles the nation's size. The annexation of Texas in 45 pushes it even further. This relentless drive just kept going until 1890, when the U.S. Census Bureau made it official. The frontier line was gone.
So just 3 years after the frontier was declared closed, this historian, Frederick Jackson Turner, comes along, and he presents what would become one of the most influential ideas in American history, the frontier thesis. His whole argument was that the unique American character wasn't something inherited from Europe. Nope, it was born from the struggle of settling a vast, untamed continent.
Turner himself put it so well. He argued that the whole process of winning a wilderness is what created the traits we think of as American. That rugged individualism, the self-sufficiency, that deep belief in egalitarianism. It wasn't an idea they imported, it was something that grew right out of the land itself.
And what's really interesting is that even after the physical frontier closed, the idea of the frontier just kept going. Think about it. President John F. Kennedy famously called Americans to a new frontier in space. You have scientists at Fermilab who even keep a heart of bison, seeing their work as pushing the frontier of physics. And today, of course, we talk about the electronic frontier, the internet. That concept is just baked into the national psyche.
All right, for our final archetype, let's turn to the United Kingdom, a nation whose identity is just inseparable from the sea that surrounds it, the so-called island race.
But what does being an island really mean? You know, at the heart of British identity, there's this constant push and pull, this tension, and it's all captured by the English Channel. On one hand, it's seen as a divider, a strategic moat that allows for splendid isolation and a fierce defense of sovereignty. But on the other hand, it's a connector, a super busy highway for trade, for ideas, for people. It was so active that even during wartime, communities on both sides often kept up trade and mail services.
And here's why that tension is so powerful. At its narrowest point,
The Strait of Dover is just 21 miles wide. That's it! It's so close, and yet it can feel like a world away. This proximity is what makes that debate, whether the channel joins or divides, a permanent fixture of British life. And history is just filled with stories that prove the channel is also a bridge. Take the Minette family. They were French Protestants fleeing persecution back in the 17th century. For them, that 21-mile stretch of water wasn't a barrier at all. It was an escape route to a whole new life. It's a perfect example of the channel being a zone of movement between nations.
And the simple island story gets even more complicated when you look at some fun details. Geologically, Britain was actually connected to Europe by a chalk bridge until about 9,000 years ago. And get this, in the 18th century, cross-channel smuggling was so common that the French actually adopted the English word for it, calling the operators smugglers. The connection has always been there, whether it was official or not.
So we've looked at three very different stories, right? A crossroads nation shaped by its neighbors, a continental nation shaped by its own expansion, and an island nation shaped by its relationship with the sea. Which brings us to the big picture.
Let's just quickly sum it all up. For Romania, the Carpathian Passes made it a crossroads, creating an identity that was always influenced by powerful empires. For the USA, it was that vast, expanding frontier that fostered individualism and a culture of movement. And for the UK, it all comes down to the Channel, creating a dual identity, focused on both sovereignty and global trade. 3 nations, 3 geographies, 3 very distinct destinies.
But all of this leads us to one final big question. In our world today, with instant communication, global travel, and digital frontiers, do these physical realities still have the same power? Has technology finally allowed us to escape the destiny that was written in our landscapes? That's something to think about.